The Innovators Network.
Welcome to the Killer Innovation Show, the longest continuously produced podcast in history. Each week, Phil McKinney brings you the insights and strategies to amplify your creativity and innovation skills. Here's your host, Phil McKinney.
Welcome to the show this week. How are you doing? Hopefully you've had a great week, coming up with some great ideas and some new innovations. And by the way, if you are working on something that you think is really interesting and you can share it, love to hear about it. So just drop me a note over at phil@killerinnovations.com or send me a direct message over in the innovators.community. That's the free community that's where I hang out, and it's made up of just hardcore innovation geeks, I guess is the best way to describe it. Everybody there is an innovation leader within their respective organization, so you can post it over there and get some feedback, and love to hear what you are working on. This week's show, taking a little bit of I guess call it orthogonal look at innovation from the standpoint of how organizations really think about it. Now, you know that or maybe you do know, maybe you don't know, I was the chief technology officer at Hewlett-Packard for a decade. And today I'm going to give you a little bit of a look behind the scenes on probably one of the most frustrating projects that I did when I was CTO there, and that was the HP touchpad. Yes, that touchpad, the product that was killed after only being in the market for 7 weeks. You can go search for it, go search for HP touchpad. You'll see tons of articles on it. In today's show, I give you the true story. I give you a look behind the curtain. We don't look at just that product. We look at release cycles in the camera industry and in Apple, both in iPod and iPhone. And the question we're looking to answer in today's show is, are these accelerating release cycles, the pace of releasing the next version of an existing product, are these release cycles hurting innovation? And that's the question we are looking to answer today. So if you're interested in release cycles, you're introducing a product where you're planning on release cycles, or you're part of an organization that has existing products that are tied or stuck in this never-ending treadmill of releases, this is the show for you. But before we hop into today's show, got a couple favors to ask. First of all, subscribe and like today's show, and send it to somebody else. Let somebody else know about today's show who might be interested in this product. Maybe a product manager within your organization, or maybe even your leadership. And I would love to hear your feedback, your thoughts on today's show after you've listened to it. But I will assure you that what you will hear in today's show, particularly behind the scenes with regards to a product like the HP touchpad, I will give you the true story that has not appeared in articles, it has not appeared in the press, but what I experienced through the process of what I thought was a pretty interesting and highly innovative product. So without any further ado, let's hop into this week's episode.
This episode is sponsored by Zoom. With Zoom, you can streamline your communication, collaboration, and creativity all in one place. Zoom is the market-leading platform that provides video meetings, voice, webinars, and chat across desktops, phones, tablets, and conference room systems. To learn more about Zoom and sign up for your free account, visit killerinnovations.com/Zoom.
Have you noticed that there is just this constant cycle of new product releases? I would categorize most of these product releases as being meaningless changes. They don't add a whole lot, but they get caught up in doing these repetitive cycles on some form of artificial schedule. And what I've figured out over all of my years having been in the product business is that these get tied to the quarterly results. This constant but meaningless change is highly driven by these organizational quarterly results. Got to report that profit. Now, these in turn are fed by the advertiser. It's the advertising pressure for those with extra purchasing power or disposable income into these unnecessary upgrades. We see it all over the place today. We see it in cars. We see it in new smartphone devices. We see it in home automation, IoT devices. We see it in the latest releases of an application. It's this constant cycling and getting you to pay for and step up into those upgrades. And what really is driving this is what I believe is this fear of being left behind. You know, you don't want to be the one that pulls out a phone that's 2 generations old. You don't want to be the person that's driving a really old car. Maybe you do. Maybe that's not one of your drivers. It's not one of my drivers. I'm not a car guy, so I don't get caught up in the latest and greatest or fastest cars, or buying the cars that are the ones that everybody's talking about. I do not own a Tesla, as an example. But there are things, though, that I even get caught up into that I will refresh, that I will get caught into these new product release cycles. Now, what is the real driver on this is this fear of being left behind. And they have turned industries and organizations and competitors turn this into literally a best practice. Product managers craft these product roadmaps, and they describe this progressive qualities, the progressive feature sets of these incremental changes. In many cases, product managers will purposely constrain it. They won't put a lot of innovations into the one release. They stretch it out over time, combining them up to figure out what will get you to refresh to that next cycle, maybe 9 months from now. And then what would be that one feature that'll get you the 9 months after that? As I said, they have turned this into a best practice or standard operating procedure to launch the subsequent releases of the same product with minor cosmetic changes. And they're minor, let's be honest. Now, many of these release schedules occur maybe in months or half a month, maybe once a year, maybe once every year and a half. But this cycle of getting you kind of baked into the schedule of your thinking along the lines of, oh, I bought this smartphone. A year from now, there's going to be another one. I'll buy that one. Then a year after that, I'll buy the next one. And look, the advertisers, the marketing people, the product managers, their job is about hyping those up to get you to lay out more money to buy those new products, buy those new services. You know, look at the news crews out there showing the people in line outside of stores in order to be the first ones to get that new device. I got to have that new device. There are a lot of examples of companies that have built in this refresh cycle, this release schedule into customers' minds. And that's not just consumers, it also applies to enterprises. Well, let's take a consumer example. The one example is Canon cameras. I am an amateur photographer. This is why I picked this particular example. So Canon has a very popular camera called the Canon Rebel. Very, very popular. And it was introduced in 1990. So just to pick a relatively short time frame and give you an example of this acceleration of the release cycle and how frequent it happens to drive people to step up and pay more to get that next new incremental capability. So between 1990 and 2004, Canon released 11, yes, 11 versions of the Rebel. So think about that. 14 years, they released 11 versions. So, okay, you're saying, okay, that's probably a little bit more than one a year. Okay, it's okay, I get it. Maybe every Christmas or whatever. Let's look at the schedule, though, that this Canon Rebel went through. So they released the initial product in 1990. Number 2 came out in 1992, then 93. The next one did not come out until 1996. Then there was another gap to 1999. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. For the next 3 next years, they went through 2 release cycles a year. So in 2002, there was a release in February and September. In 2003, it was April and September. And in 2004, it was April and September again. So what you saw is one maybe every second or third year, to then 1 a year, to 2 a year. So they were accelerating to release that next version of the Canon Rebel on an annualized basis. Now, another example would be the Apple iPod. And from 2002 to 2011, there was a new release of the iPod every year. And think about the iPhone. It's roughly about every year. In fact, I was commenting to a friend of mine, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago in a conversation around the iPhone and the iPhone release schedule, and how it was driving me nuts, and it drives a lot of other people nuts about how frequently some of these devices get updated. And I recall back on the iPhone where there was a delay. Apple had built it in to the consumer's mind that they would get a product typically, in the fallish time frame every year. And so the marketplace had all this built up anticipation that Apple was going to release a new phone, get all excited. And they didn't release it. They didn't release it until after the first of the year, of that year. And what happened? Apple stock price took a hit because people are thinking, the only reason they didn't do it is they're having problems, they can't manufacture, we create this kind of artificial timeline of what's the magic about once a year. Is it because of the holiday selling cycle? What drives it? It is expectations set in customers' minds. It has no correlation to the effort needed to innovate new capabilities, new products, new services. Now, these release cycles, they vary by industry. It's not consistent. Most, what I would call consumer electronic devices, typically start off at it takes about a year from the time you come up with an idea until that product is on the shelf. In the case of automotive, it could be 3, 4, 5 years from the time they develop the concept of a car until they're able to actually manufacture it. In the case of laptops, when I was CTO at Hewlett Packard, it was typically kind of in that 9 to 10 months. It used to be 14, 15, 16 months, and through technologies, we were able to accelerate it. Now, there's a lot of things that make up these refresh cycles. It could be tooling, and this tooling, the ability to do more advanced tooling and faster tooling allows you to reduce that cycle. Buying subcomponents, using suppliers for consistent components like cameras going into a laptop or the camera elements going into a smartphone. Those are all coming from sub-component manufacturers. Hardware can be standardized, standard processor. So the processor in device A is the same processor in device B. You get volume pricing, it allows you to reduce your cost, it reduces your risk, and you can refresh, you can have a faster cycle time. However, software nowadays is where intellectual property is created. It's where the unique experience is. Now, I'm talking about this in the form of of technology products. But look, release cycles apply to a lot of things. It can, it can be attached to fashion. It could be attached to home appliances. It could be attached to a whole variety of things. So it's not just smartphones and laptops and PCs and those types of things, which you may think that that's what I focus on because of my career history, but it applies to everything. And nowadays, some cycles are 3 to 6 months. Literally, as soon as you get the product out, there's another one coming out right on its heels. Now, inside of organizations, now I'm thinking about this as you're inside of an organization, you have existing products and services, you are the innovator. Now, what is it you want to create? As an innovator, you want to create revolutionary products. You want to break the mold. You want to create something new. You want to create something different, something that is really a standout innovation. However, when the quarterly profits are reported in an organization that becomes really tied to these refresh cycles, the pressure to pump up sales, pump up profits, comes from shortening the release cycle, making the release cycles more frequent in order to try to drive people to step up and buy that next one. So you buy, a phone, and then 10 months later there's a new phone, and if you keep that and you take the cycle, which was a year, and you make it now regularly 10 months, you actually can use that acceleration of the release schedule to drive profit and margin. And this becomes for lack of a better descriptor, it becomes a drug that many organizations get hooked on. When these quarterly profits get driven by doing these release cycles, it conveys a false sense of innovation capability to shareholders, to investors. Because everybody sits back and goes, wow, look at that increased productivity. They've accelerated revenue growth. They've got new features and new capabilities. And they're able to do that through controlled spending. Well, it's an artificial window dressing. It's not real. You're using the refresh cycle to drive it. And organizations that really get hung up on this, they fail to make those long-term investments, and they fail to show a willingness to introduce or invest in revolutionary products. Because what are you going to do? Am I going to put $1 into an unknown product on an unknown time in the future that is going to drive revenue, or do I just feed the next release schedule? And where do CFOs want to make that investment? Into the sure thing, into that next release cycle. So let me give you an example. This is a personal example. Now, I've never talked about this on the show very much or publicly very much, but with this topic, I think I need to kind of pull the curtain back so that you can hear from me on what happened on a very high profile, very visible product that the press got wrong. Most people got wrong as to what was the real issue. That product is the HP touchpad. So the HP touchpad, HP introduced this. So this would have been summertime-ish 2011. It was based off of some HP tablet work that was already underway at HP. In fact, go over to the show notes. I'll have a link to maybe one or a couple of YouTube videos that give you some insight into the work that we were doing in tablets. One of those videos is me demonstrating a very, very rough proof of concept, rough hardware prototype of some of this early tablet work. So the HP tablet work was already underway, had been for many years, and HP had acquired Palm in order to get access to WebOS, which even to this day I think is a phenomenal portable mobile operating system. So It was a combination of the HP tablet work and WebOS. Now, what ultimately happened? Well, the product was released, and then it turned around, and the HP board of directors killed that product 7 weeks later. Yes, 7 weeks. Now, I was the CTO at the time. I was one of 2 executives that pushed really hard to do the Palm acquisition. I led the technology due diligence on the Palm acquisition around WebOS. Part of my innovation program office team in HP Labs was doing the work on the tablet. The Palm team doing WebOS, led by Andy Grignon and the team there, which were a lot of ex-Apple people doing phenomenal work. We thought we were on a path. Now, at that time, I also had taken a little sabbatical, so I was out for about 2 months. I had to have a really kind of minor medical procedure, and I thought, I hadn't taken vacation in 3 or 4 years at HP. So combined with that, I decided to take some time off. So literally from the roughly July 1st until Labor Day, I was unplugged from HP. Lo and behold, guess what happened? All of this came to roost right in this time frame, the 7 weeks. Now, what really drove it? What really drove the 7 weeks? Quite honestly, people say, oh, the leadership didn't have confidence or whatever. In reality, it was internal fighting. It was internal organizational fighting at HP. What was that fighting? That fighting was you had traditional product groups which were hooked on this release schedule. Introduce that new product, introduce that new laptop, that new printer, that new whatever, and keep that release cycle going, getting people to step up, buy the next printer, buy the ink, buy the next laptop, buy the next whatever, right? Get them on that release schedule. And dollars invested in new products like the HP touchpad or the GPS product, which I've talked about in a previous show about what went wrong with that product. The internal teams, the teams that were on the more traditional product side of the business, which were tied to these release cycles, basically came out and were very negative. Internally, were very negative against anything new, anything that would funnel any dollars away from the next release cycle to be invested in anything new, anything that was truly innovative. The innovation antibodies came out in force. And let me tell you, they came out with, knives and chains and belts. It was an all-out fighting for those dollars, to get those dollars out of anything new and innovative and put into things that were the feed that next release cycle. That was laptops, it was printers, anything that was on this more traditional release cycle. The mentality is look, release cycle types of products where it's very, very incremental, cosmetic things. Oh, we're going to go from a black plastic case design on laptops to go to a silver aluminum look case. Woohoo! Exciting. But they're safe bets. They're low risk. And inside of a lot large organizations, in many cases, particularly if they're public, it's about the safe bet. It's about the low risk. And at that time, the CEO leadership and the board of directors at HP did not have a high risk tolerance. They only wanted the safe bet. They wanted assurances that the company would meet its quarterly numbers each and every quarter. That was the only criteria. It wasn't a criteria about, driving long-term growth or, creating products that transform people's lives. No, it was all about being driven to the quarterly number. That was the one and only metric that was driving all of these activities. So this internal fighting basically got way out of control. And ultimately, that's what killed the touchpad, and it killed a whole range of products. And I can go through a whole long list of them where this infighting resulted in anything that was new, anything that was innovative, anything that was not a feature of an existing product as part of its release cycle was attacked by the innovation antibodies. Now, we have to, the piece I'm trying to make you aware of is that we, as leaders, as an innovation leader, you have to be careful that you don't fall into this trap. You don't fall into this trap where the release schedule gives you a false sense of innovation. Well, look, I put a new feature in. Look, we changed the design. We improved the GUI. If it's part of the kind of product management release cycle, hey, that's great. But don't fall into the trap that you're thinking that that qualifies, check the box, you are a highly innovative organization. That's not really innovation. That's really artificial marketing. That's marketing that describes some new feature as innovation. And maybe you've hired some people that do really good copywriting. They can really take something and really fluff it up and make it sound like innovation. Do not fool yourself. And through this whole experience with the touchpad, if you haven't been a long-time listener and you were not listening to the show, you can go back through this timeline and you can hear, you can probably hear it in my voice or my stress or my frustration during that summer of 2011. Ultimately, in August of 2011, I announced to the HP leadership that I was leaving. I hit the wall. When this happened with the HP touchpad and WebOS and Palm and all of that, I hit the wall. That's it. I pulled the ripcord. I'm leaving. HP did not want to make the announcement that I was leaving. Meg and the team asked me to stay until after they made the announcement because there was also a discussion about spinning out the PC division of HP. So I agreed to sit tight. And ultimately, that decision was made just before Halloween. So on October 31st, I published a blog post announcing that I would be leaving HP. And it's still up. You can go over to philmckinney.com. You can read. The title of the blog post is Goodbye HP. Then I was asked to stay until December 31st, which I agreed to do as part of a transition period, which I did. But let me tell you, my frustration of having gone through the innovation antibodies multiple times, look, you're never going to have a perfect environment where everybody's going to endorse your idea and you're going to, just crush it every time. Innovation is extremely frustrating. And as an innovation leader, get ready. It's a game of endurance. You've got to be willing to suffer through an extensive amount of pain. But the way this was handled, the way the HP touchpad was handled, this is kind of, for lack of a better descriptor, it was innovation antibodies at a beyond pro level. I mean, it was in the extreme category. And at that point, as an innovation leader, you have to make the call. And I made the call. Punched out. I'm done. That's it. This is not an organization that truly understands what does it mean to be a truly innovation. So the question that we started off this episode on, which was, does accelerating release schedules hurt innovation? My answer to you is yes. Yes. You need to invest in innovation not linked to a release schedule. There's the 7 laws of innovation. If you've not read that post, go over to philmckinney.com. Just search for 7 laws. It'll come up. There's a whole series of them. 2 of the laws: law of patience, law of resources. Law of patience says innovation takes longer than you think. It's messy. You're going to uncover things. You're going to try things that are not going to work. Trying to force innovation to be predictable into a release schedule really is not innovation. That's pure incrementalism. It's pure cosmetics when you take no risk and you're just incremental feeding. The other is the law of resources is don't tie your resource commitment to an innovation to a budget cycle or to a release cycle. Meaning we'll invest as long as you can make it into the next release. But if you can't make it into the next release, that's too long range. We can't make that investment. We can't create a 2-year budget commitment around an innovation project or a 5-year budget commitment. That's an organization you're in, then you're not really doing innovation. So you need to invest in innovation. It's not linked to the release schedule. It's the law of patience, the law of resources, and go check it out. Go read those over at philmckinney.com. And the one thing that I would give you as an innovation leader is fight the urge to be like everyone else. You're going to say, well, hold on. We're in this industry, and Acme company over here is putting out a new release every year. Okay? And so therefore we have to. Okay? So you are a fast follower. You're not an innovator. If your direction is we have to because our competitors do it, then you're a fast follower. You're following their lead. You're letting their strategy drive your direction. You can win. It's not an either or. Release schedules are not bad inherently. But when you become so focused on the release schedule to the detriment of innovation, that is what I'm talking about. You can win. It's not either. It's both. You have to have a release schedule, and you need to feed the long-range innovation. To win, just don't ignore the long term in favor of just hitting that release schedule. That is what I'm emphasizing here. That is what I want you to keep your eyes open for, and that's the trap you need to avoid. So hopefully you learned something in today's show, how you should be thinking about your release schedules and how you should be thinking about longer term, unpredictable investments with innovation. So again, check out the show notes. Check out some of the past postings over on the blog over at philmckinney.com, particularly around the 7 laws of innovation. Before we say goodbye, a couple things. One is I would ask that you, again, subscribe, like the show, give us some comments, and most importantly, tell others. Share on social media, share with friends, colleagues, or even the leadership within your organization. If you think this is an episode or a show that others should be listening regularly to, I would greatly appreciate it. The purpose of the show, the purpose of why we've been doing this for now 16 years, we've started season 17 back on March 1st. So starting the 17th year of doing this show, all of the content, everything back historically is free. You can find the entire catalog, yes, all the way back to show number 1 in March of 2005, where I recorded the first show in the bathroom at the Marriott Resort in Phoenix, Arizona. So you can go back, you can listen to that first show and listen to the entire archive if you want to. But we've been doing the show, we've been giving away the content for free as a way for me to pay it forward. That was the ask from my mentor when I asked him how I could pay him back. He laughed and he said, "You can't pay me back. Pay it forward. Invest in others. Share your expertise, share your knowledge with others so that they can then use that knowledge and use that expertise for success in their own career." And that is what drives me to do this show each and every week for the last 16 years. So all I ask is help me to pay it forward by letting others know about the show. And I would greatly, greatly appreciate that. We're also looking for any content ideas, any questions you would want addressed in the show. We've got a couple that have come in. We will be doing those in upcoming shows here. Always looking, though, for new questions, new things that are on your mind, things that you would like to know about. feel free, drop us a note. Best way to do that is send them over to me at phil@killerinnovations.com, and we'll add it to the list of upcoming show. And with that, hope you have a great week. Do not let the innovation antibodies get you down. Have that innovation grit, that innovation perseverance. Come up with those ideas that are going to change the world. Thanks for being with us this week. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Podcasting nonstop since 2005, this has been the Killer Innovation Show on the Innovators Network.
This show is distributed by the Innovators Network. For more information and other great shows and content, visit theinnovators.network.